And welcome everyone. I see we have almost 60 participants today. That's wonderful and amazing. And I love hearing where people are signing in from as well. Obviously, I'm here in Manoa on Oahu. And Hadi, maybe give us a sense of where you are.
I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Redwood, Brooklyn, in my studio.
Okay, so this is the second chapter in our ongoing series, Out of the Camera Beyond Photography, which is a year-long series of solo exhibitions in our Commons Gallery at the Art Building at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, examining contemporary photographers whose work calls into question our assumptions about the medium of photography and perhaps helps us better understand photography as a medium itself. Next up, we have Stephanie Sujuko in the spring, so look for her work starting in January. And I'm very, very proud to introduce Hadi Fallahpisheh to our campus community. Hadi was born in Tehran in 1987 and has presented works at venues in New York, including Barbara Gladstone Gallery, Friedrich Petzel, Tramps, Sculpture Center, Simone Subal, Kai Matsu, Kai Matsumiya, Off and Dome, Calico Fine Arts, in Miami at Central Fine, in Los Angeles at Blum & Poe, and in Tehran at T Mocha. As well as a number of other galleries. He has an MFA from Bard College and is a teaching assistant in the Department of Art, Film, and Visual Studies at Harvard University, and is a recipient of an Artadia Award and a residency at Socrates Sculpture Park in 2019. His solo exhibition Blow Ups is currently, or I think it just went down at Andrew Cupp's Gallery in New York.
Yes, it just closed.
So I'm thrilled he could fit us into his busy schedule. His show is currently on view in our Commons Gallery through the window glass only. I have an image of it up behind me, and I'm just excited to get to talk to Hadi. He's someone whose work I have been following closely and really admire, and also I'm just very curious about his thinking about photography right now. I guess I actually wanted to start unconventionally by bringing up your mother in this talk. You were born in Tehran, where I believe your mother was a photography teacher. Is that right?
Yes, she was. She became, when I was born, she wasn't the photography teacher, but I was like maybe 8 years old or 7 years old when she got a job to teach photography in an art school. She was supposed to become a journalist, a photojournalist, and somehow through that, at the time, it's like early 90s in Tehran. So I guess where she was learning to be a photojournalist, she was also learning how to print her photographs, and then I guess she fell in love with the idea of the agrandissement or the enlarger, the photo enlarger. And then I remember when that machine came to our house, and then from there, she chose not to be a photojournalist anymore, and then she started having a more kind of like a fine arts photographer practice, and also she was studying. So then she got a job to teach photography at the same time.
And we're actually first, I think, kind of intersected with you in one of your exhibitions was actually this show. I'm going to start sharing my screen if that's okay. Here. So this is a show that you did of your mother's work. Can people see that okay? Is that working?
Black screen, I see.
Do other people see it?
Oh, I see it.
I'm getting a thumb
I got
by text from someone. Is that okay? You see it?
Yes,
too? Yeah. So this is a show that Hadi curated at Baxter Street. It was at the Camera Club in New York, right, of his mother's work. And I was very struck by it, and also struck by I think some of the resonances between her work, which does involve some photogram sort of process, and the work that you're doing now. Can you speak a little bit about well, I guess first this exhibition?
Right.
That was really interesting.
I mean, that exhibition was curated. It was a co-curation. I did with my partner Phoebe there, and the work was also my mom's photographs displayed on a display system by Fia Backestrom. So the metal structure that you showed in previous slide was the work by Fia Backstrom. Fia had already in the past, I believe like maybe in 2016, had an exhibition that Fia Wexstrom is known as a photographer, but she had a solo show, and then she chose, instead of showing only her own photographs, she chose to show this photo display in the gallery at the time. And then she showed some photographers from, mostly female photographers from Midwest in America, and also some European photographers. At the time I was Fia as a student, so I really liked the exhibition, and I told Fia that I wish I think one of my mom's photographs could have been hanging from your tree, because like a tree, it's like a tree that has different fruits. And then when I planted that idea, 2 years later, there was a chance that we were able to co-curate this exhibition. I was able to bring this display system from Fia's studio, and I was able to get these photographs with the help of a friend of mine from Iran. She sent them, as you are seeing. So the photographs themselves are basically, as you're describing, they are somewhere between photogram and some sort of manipulation in the darkroom. For example, she uses, here it's not so much photogram, it's mostly using like chemicals on the photo paper and like blocking, or to mess and playing with the using the wrong time of developer, or like the stop bass, those kind of manipulations. But also when she was sending the photographs, for every photograph she had a fabric assigned to each photograph, and she wanted them to be seen on this fabric that were somewhat abstract, abstract forms, but also like they were, you could also recall that maybe that's the left one here is the kind of fabric maybe is used for a skirt, or the right one, bottom one, that's like maybe fabric it would be used for a shirt, or like some sort of clothing, because she had this idea from time I remember that it's so much about intimacy, so much about that act of the hand getting involved with the making of photography. So I think that was her idea.
And can you tell me a little bit about the subject of the photos? I'm struck by the number of kind of double exposures, like there seems to be a man and a woman's face on this one. And then, also the way in which there's sort of netting overlaid on some of the images, which obviously takes place in the darkroom. And then they were mounted on fabric, and then they were put into this Fia's armature.
Exactly. Like what you're seeing here is, and also she has been very consistent about what she has been doing since, I believe, 1992, 1993. So like this work is from 1994. It's really, I remember when she made it, and all had to watch it for like a couple of years in our house because she was really proud of it. Or like the previous slide was like one of them was from 1998, one of them was from 2004, one of them was 2010. So she has been always having this kind of darkroom practice. Personally, I sometimes think we moved too many times as a human in Tehran. So we constantly moved from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. We went out of the city to live in a much smaller village. But one thing that I always remember is that wherever we went to like see the houses or to see the apartment that we could move in, the concern always was that, is there a basement, or is there an extra bedroom, or is there a storage, like a closet?
So you had a dark room in your house at all times?
I did grow up with a dark room in most of the houses we lived, yes.
Yeah, and this like real intimacy, kind of maternal intimacy with
exactly
non-traditional development processes.
Right. But at the same time, I never made a photograph in the darkroom. I wasn't really allowed to be there. So we had this room that my sister and I weren't really allowed to get involved. Maybe I mentioned this before too, but it might be interesting for some others that my relationship with darkroom was just getting punished there, because if I would do something wrong as a child, like as a 12 years old, if I had bothered my sister, then I would be put in the darkroom and for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes to realize that what bad things I have done, and then I had to come out and say I'm sorry, and I knew that I should have not hurt the sister. Yeah.
So it's so Freudian. So both this maternal space and this womb-like space, and the space of punishment and isolation.
Right. Exactly.
So just to get to the way that you were showing it, because that always struck me as so interesting. I think the show you were talking about was one of the shows Piper Marshall curated at Mary Boone. And that was Fia's show, but then Fia put on display photographs by I think it was all women photographers in this armature.
Mostly American, and some of them from Eastern Europe, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Do you and then you also were maybe at the time or shortly thereafter studying with Fia, right? At
At
the
the time, I had just finished my MFA. I received my MFA in 2016. I started 2014, and when that show was happening, I had just finished my MFA basically. I was a postgrad.
and am I right? Was Fia running the MFA program in photo at
She
that time?
was, yes, she was the co-chair of the department at Bard College. Yeah.
What did you take from her and from studying with her in particular? And
Um, I mean, one thing that other than this kind of ideas around the modes of display, how you would use display photograph, the work isn't necessarily done when you produce or you make a work. It's also it's on you, the artist, to decide how the work is going to be seen, what kind of structure or what kind of system you are going to activate in the exhibition. One other thing that I think I learned from Fia was that she herself has a very interesting practice with spoken words and playing not necessarily with a visual practice, but kind of getting involved with words, with language, with the spoken language. um, I was really influenced by that aspect of Fia's work. I did a series of a year-long performance, which was mostly I would show the photograph and I would describe them through the language. There was never text involved. I think that was Fia's we had a little conflict sometimes because she was always telling me, your work isn't so much about the surface. Like, what about the surface? And I would always say, it doesn't matter. The surface is just there. It's a photo paper. I cannot do. I'm talking. I'm fighting another war. My battle isn't really the surface. I'm more interested in what happens in the photograph, in the kind of picture plane, and not the surface necessarily. Most of my colleagues were dealing with surface at the time. I wasn't.
and before we get to the show that you did here, I think I encountered your work or some version of your work in the Honolulu Biennial in gosh, was that 2018? Did
19.
you, or maybe 2019? You
Right.
so you were here with A.R. Akawa, who was also, I think, maybe your mentor or professor.
Right.
Can you talk about working with him? I mean, he's obviously working in performance.
Yes, we got friends, and we met each other through one of the performances I was talking about. That I was doing some sort of performance that I would, instead of showing the photograph on the wall, I would just hold the photographs in front of me, and I would tell a story or tell kind of narrate the description, narrate the caption of the photograph with the spoken language. And I invited, I'm a fan of I's work, and I invited him to be one of the people who would see the performance. And from there, we became friends. And for the biennial, I was really lucky to be there, and we did a performance. His concept of my work at the time was that you are always playing a role of a hopeless man, or someone so hopeless that you just feel so bad for him, but then also you want to laugh at him. So the performance I did was kind of a play on that in Honolulu. It was in Chinatown, in Honolulu. I basically had a bucket of water, and I was holding it with, I don't know if you saw that performance, but I was holding a bucket of water to the ceiling with a broom. But it wasn't my job. Someone else was working, and it was like a staged performance. So someone was working on a ladder, and they had a bucket of water, and they told me to hold this bucket of water with a broom stick. And then when I was holding him, they came down and they left. So it was just the artist, again, in that hopeless manner, holding a bucket of water to the ceiling with a broomstick. And if I was leaving, I would have just accepted the water would fall on me. That's what we
And
did.
kind of this cartoonish position to
It
put
was.
yourself.
It's like kind of a slapstick, even a kind of maybe forced humor, that you feel bad for the person who is doing it, but also it's funny. The situation is humorous.
So something that really strikes me about your photographs and the work that we have on display is how deeply they're rooted in performance,
Right.
and how much I mean, I suppose, someone really argumentative could argue all photography has that relationship to something that's been there before, or that kind of indexical trace. But I feel like your photos really do that in a quite a unique way for I mean, obviously they're cameraless, so they're not being taken with a camera or lens, and they're light drawings. Can you describe this technique a little bit for people who maybe also have or haven't seen the show?
Yes, definitely. So basically, to simplify the process, how these photographs are made, is imagining a person who goes to a complete pitch darkness room and uses flashlight, uses light like a paintbrush. Like in the image you are sharing on the left side, you see the dark lines, the black, basically reddish black line. That's basically a flashlight going on top of the paper and burning it really slowly, so it would cause that burning, the burning aspect, the burning effect. I call it burning. I assume everyone is familiar with, but it's a term that they are using when there is too much light. There is too much light exposed to the paper, so then there is no more information left but the darkness, the blackness. They call it burning, basically. So I burn the paper with the light. Basically, I'm overexposing it for a long time, so then it just leaves a black trace. That's synthesizing in a very like a very simple way, but there is like more layers involved that makes it more to a kind of performance. Because, for example, um, I make the work while I'm on the paper. The paper is on the floor, on the ground. I work on it. I draw it. Most of the photographs are big enough, as you can see in the images, that the body is like a body size. So my body is always involved. Then my body becomes maybe one of the characters or tries to escape one of the characters. So like if you stand in front of that left picture, for example, the yellow picture, a body like my body could literally be the mouse that's sitting there, for example, or the cat that's walking behind, or um, basically what I'm saying is that the body kind of fits in this photograph, because the photo paper is the stage for my body. That's how it turns to a more kind of performance. But then I'm consciously playing with the idea of performance. It's a performance, but no one has seen it because no one can see it. It's complete darkness, and I'm consciously twisting that idea that, well, can we call it a performance if no one has seen it, But then with the same promise is that then I need this photograph, because the photograph showed that there was a performance happening in my darkroom. You can see that act of drawing, working on it, burning, and also it has a time. So it's very much like a performance, because performance has a beginning and has an ending. So it's like it has a time base, and these photographs are pretty much time based.
And so to just kind of set the stage, you're in your dark room, or you're in a dark room with this it's almost 4 or 5 feet long,
basically at least 5 feet, at least. Yeah,
at least 5 feet long, a roll of light sensitive color photo paper,
right, which is
and
sometimes confusing, because we call it unexposed color photo paper, but in fact it's a white paper. It's a white unexposed paper, and every color you see that is coming out is basically done with my flashlight. Different kinds of flashlight I have different colors. Like my set of flashlight is like maybe 24 different colors I have now, and I use them.
so it's kind of a drawing or almost a painting where you're picking up different color flashlights and using them.
Basically, for every photograph, I won't use more than 2. I haven't used more than 2 because it becomes really confusing. And then every flashlight has a different kind of depth and power, the amount of light that comes out of it. So if I mix them, then sometimes it goes out of control. It becomes really messed up. So I usually stick to 1 or 2 flashlight that would go together well for the photograph.
It's really incredible to see up close. I don't think I have any. I think later in the slideshow we have some images, but the light almost kind of cracks on the surface.
Right.
I mean, the surface itself is very glossy and smooth and almost kind of bumper car like and shiny and beautiful. But then the effect of the light hitting the surface of the paper produces almost like an image of cracking.
Right.
And
That's also basically. I'm also interested how the language plays a role in photography, So I'm dealing with burning, and then that other effect that you're describing is called bleeding, So they call the light is bleeding out when, for example, I put my flashlight on the paper and then the light bleeds out, and that causes those effect that you're talking about, which is really painterly. It's really interesting, but it's out of my control. It's basically 100% chance how the light is kind of bleeding out, also becomes bodily at the same time, because if you cut your hand, you cannot really control how the blood is supposed to come out of the hand, So it's like really much bodily involved, but then I'm controlling it. I'm not making it so much horror or those kind of things,
And to go a little even further with chance, can you talk about these moments of very bright light that happen, like with the fire, the dog in the fire here, or the ball?
Yes. But that's an added layer of chance that I'm forcing it to the work. But basically every work that, even without those white spots that Micah is pointing to, it's basically it's an operation of chance, because although I'm using different colors of flashlight, but I'm not sure what color is really going to come out. I know that it will be some kind of, for example, for the piece we are seeing in the center of the room, like I know that it was going to be red, but I wasn't sure what kind of red or how deep of a red, for example, or with the
And
exactly.
you won't know until it's developed in the color.
Exactly, and I will not see it. I make the work, and sometimes I develop it 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month. When I'm in the mode of making the work, it becomes really confusing to then also develop the work. So I make work for like maybe for 1 week, 2 weeks, and then I develop them. But basically the chance is there because I don't see the color. I'm not sure even like how much the flashlight is burning, how thick are really going to line to be, how much the light is going to be lit out, as you are saying. But the one other forced kind of chance operation that I forced to the work is that this white circle, I'm moving my mouse, but I don't think they can see it. But on the right side of the photograph, there is a kind of white circle, and that's made with the place of a ball. For every piece I make, I throw a ball to the piece, and if the ball hits the paper, it activates my enlarger and it exposes the flashes the red light, for example, here, or in the other one there was a yellow light, and that becomes really play of the chance in a twisted way, because I will not stop the process until my ball has hit the photograph. So it's not fully chance because I'm repeating it again and again. It's like trying to repeat the chance, but also the chance plays a role because I will not see that where I'm throwing the ball at or where the ball is going to hit the photo paper. So sometimes the ball is a little cut off. Sometimes the ball, for example, for this piece, I really wanted this white spot to be in front of the cat's right foot. Like the cat is escaping and carrying the mouse and also wants to carry the ball from the house, like everything that is important for them. But by chance, I don't see that where I threw the ball. So the ball hit on the right side, and when I developed it, it's like, it looks good. I mean, now the ball is burning out in the fire, but the chance is that the viewer, the audience is always willing to complete the piece, So if the ball is inside the fire on the right, then it looks like fire. If it was on the center top, then it would look like for the viewer's eye, it would look like a landscape or like a sunset or like a full moon. If it was in front of the cat's foot, then it would look like a ball, It's all these different modes that allows the audience to get involved and complete the work, kind of,
Yeah.
So I don't control where the ball goes, but then the viewer completes it by imposing that, okay, this is the ball that's the fire, for example, here, or that's the full moon, or that's the sunset, or different ways,
Yeah, as someone who, definitely used to take analog photos. I mean, in high school, that's all we had in this world. The work really speaks to me of that, the way photography puts forward a latent image, and that feeling of potentiality and mystery that you'd get just by shooting a roll of 24 or 36 negatives and not having processed them yet, and just the sort of mystery of that moment when you know that there's that latent image on the photosensitive material, but you haven't yet seen anything. And I think each one of these little performances encapsulates that so beautifully, that that process of mystery. And I think also something that really moved me is when I spoke to you about the show 6 months ago, it turned out you'd been doing these during the COVID lockdowns in New York, kind of making your way to the darkroom. And so there was this added layer of kind of darkness and mystery shrouding their production as well.
Yeah, I remember. I think I was just talking with a friend of mine today that I described it the same way, that a lot of my friends, they stopped maybe making work at the beginning of pandemic because no one knew what's going to happen. Are we even supposed to make art? What's the use of art? But my idea was that, well, I have been already making work making a dark world for myself, a dark room for myself for the last 5 years. So it's just like an exaggerated situation. So it seems like a dark world right now. I mean, the early pandemic, like in April, late March. And I was just like, I told myself that, hey, it's just in your favor, because now it's a double darkness in around you, just go in the darkness and do what you were doing. So I actually made I spent a lot of time in the dark room in that dark time of the first 2-3 months of the lockdown and the quarantine and the pandemic that started.
At what point, can I ask, did you start processing them, these
Um,
results?
it's funny because of the lockdown and because of the quarantine, all the laboratories were closed till June. So I did not see what I have made for 3 months and a half, from late March to late June, almost 4 months. And then I went and processed them slowly, like 1 or 2
Yeah,
every day.
I think for me also, I've been interested historically in the relationship of performance and photography for some time, and the kind of mystery of how photography since the at least the 60s has been capturing performance in exhibition spaces and these different relationships between
Right,
performers and cameras. And this to me seemed like another step in that process, or that
right,
evolution, where you do these performances in the dark room, there is no audience, but then it quite kind of beautifully reveals itself as this very visual and rich
right.
image when it's developed. So I really
I
enjoyed.
mean, I personally think that today it would be really hard to escape the performance aspect of every medium. We are not really living at a time that you could differentiate them in that way. So in most of my work, whatever I do, I think the performance comes in because it's the most exciting part of art making. It's some sort of performance. That's how I see it. And but also, like, then I play with it. For every piece, then I will maybe take a role, a different kind of, put a different kind of performance in it. Sometimes the animals are running, so that's another kind of performance. Sometimes they are all chill, they are inside. Those kind of plays. But at the same time, I was really interested in that idea of my work is performance, but the performance itself captures it. That's kind of, I guess that's like, maybe that's what you're maybe pointing to, that the performance itself is producing the work, and it's allowing the work to come out. It's documenting itself at the same time. I didn't need a camera. I didn't need a film camera or like a tape recorder to do it. The work itself allows that, which is one of the reasons I guess I'm doing it, because I'm interested in that kind of pushing the mediums to the boundaries, to the edge, to try to expand them a little. So they are really, really performative pieces. They are documents of a performance, honestly, more than photographs, basically.
You also spoke to me about other more explicit performances that you've done. Is this, I didn't ask you if you wanted to talk about that, but is this an okay forum to
Yeah,
talk
sure.
about? There's a performance, I think, around burying maybe Molotov cocktails that you were engaged in. I
Um,
don't know if that's
I did
good for them.
two kind of performance. One is that Micah is pointing to. In 2016, when I had finished my MFA, and I had to go back to Iran because my visa had ended, but I didn't want to go back to Iran. I had issues, and I was scared of going back because I was thinking my passport might get taken away because of the art I had made, and other problems I had. So I chose to stay in America without a visa, kind of without a status, and which is an illegal act to do. You should not do that. But I did it because that's the only thing I could do. I didn't want to go back. And it's 2016, end of 2016, early 2017. It's the same time that Trump was elected. And then when he was elected, at the time, he put a ban for Iranian people along 6 other countries. It was called Muslim ban or country ban. So that even made, my hope was that I will stay in America and I will get an artist visa. But then he put that kind of ban, and it caused me to feel really hopeless. And then I felt that, okay, I really tried to escape, not going back, but it seems like there is no way to not go back. So I had to go back. But as the final piece, as of my final piece, which is also very performative, as you are saying, I had a little saving money, and I chose to use that money to buy wine from Trump's winery. And for the it was like I was supposed to, for example, the things, I was supposed to go back to Iran in late February, in mid-March, and then in January I went and bought 2024 bottle of Trump wine, and I drank them over 2 months. And that's the performance, basically. So it's, imagine an artist who is forcing himself every afternoon around 4 or 5 in the winter in upstate New York to finish one bottle of wine, because that bottle of wine, the empty bottle of wine, is part of the art. What is the art? The art is that the artist is going to fill them with gasoline and turn them to Molotov. So by end of winter, I had made 24 Molotovs in my studio in a garage in upstate, and it's already really performative, right? You are drinking the wine. There's a time for it. Then at the end of the night or early morning, you have to go to gas station, buy 4 gallons of gas because you don't have a car. So then you are carrying this gallon of gas to the storage, to the garage, to the home, and then you are filling them. So you see that it's a really twisted idea of a performance. You know, that I have a time. It has to be done by mid March. But when I finished it, it was supposed to be a performance. I was going to throw them at Trump Tower as a performance. My idea was I will invite some people, like private invitation. People will come and see that I'm putting a performance out. But then a couple of my friends told me that if you do that, you will get killed. My hope was that I would get deported by doing that. I was like, okay, if I'm going back to Iran, I want to be deported. But everyone told me, forget about deportation. You will get killed, or you will face more severe correspondence to that performance. So then that's, I guess, the part that you are saying. Then I decided that, okay, I'm not going to get killed. I don't want to get killed for my art, you know. So I made a map of upstate. I found all the places, the lands that were state owned. They didn't have a private owner. And then every night for maybe it was like it happened over 4 nights, but like each night was like within 10 days. It took like maybe 10 days for me to get the energy for every time. I would dig a hole, and then I would put these 4 or 5 bottle of Molotovs inside this box. I would grab them, and then I would put them in this ground, and then so it was like a very similar to what I guess you're describing, because it was happening at night, because I was scared of being seen of what I'm doing, or if someone would come and say, hey, what you're doing. So it was mostly done blind, but then like I would go to the location in the afternoon. In the afternoon, I would sit around for like 1 hour for the light would go down. So I knew what I'm doing. I knew how many feet I should like walk to the right side of the road, for example, to dig how much, you know. But it was happening in the darkness, basically. And then I did that in 2017. I never went back upstate for that part of the upstate to find them till this past summer. So they were buried there for 3 years. And then this past summer, I remembered them because of the protests happening all around, and I was part of them in New York. I remembered them, and with my partner Phoebe, we went there. But again, we went there at night because I'm still too scared of going and finding those Molotovs, you know. So again, I found them at night in darkness with a flashlight. So I guess like my understanding is that you're pointing that aspect of what I'm doing in the dark room is very similar to what happened through this performance in real life, that someone is walking in the darkness carrying a flashlight. But then I'm also aware that even the way I'm talking about it, it could also remind you of a criminal person, a thief who is coming to also your house with a flashlight, probably, you know, or other aspects of being an artist. But then what about that? And also, like, you could ask them, like, but you know that making a Molotov is a crime, right? Or those kind of things are always involved, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I even think back to your mother's darkroom and you getting locked in it
Right,
as
exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I see this parallel, but I think particularly for me between the surfaces of these color photographic images and the way that you perform to draw on them, and this kind of mapping of the Molotov cocktails at night, the burial, and the way that kind of takes place under the cover of darkness, but also has this kind of way of revealing itself visually along different planes. Like maybe there's a map of it, or maybe there's sort of fear of ignition, and then the
Right.
sorry, I'm not being very articulate here, but the overlay of deportation. Was there a second performance you wanted to talk about? I also have all the other slides that we could go through if it
I did at the same time. I did, when I was living in upstate, I did a series of photographs very similar to what I'm showing in Honolulu, in Hawaii, with the same way of making photographs, going to a dark room, using flashlight to burn something on the photo paper. But it's 4 years ago, 2016. So I wasn't maybe as brave as what I'm doing today to just use light on the unexposed blank photo paper. At the time, I had negatives, and I would burn the paper, burn the picture. Basically, I would manipulate the picture And then with that work, I made a series of work at the time. Should I share something here? It's like maybe some images,
Oh
but
yeah,
that might be helpful. Maybe I'll stop sharing and I will share.
stopped.
Okay, cool. I just show some examples of what I'm describing so it would make sense. So for example, on the left side, that was an image of like an Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I made a double negative of that picture, and that's my body on the photo paper. That's my
Your
right.
hand.
No, that's actually
Yeah.
that's my legs. That's my right foot, and that's my left foot. You
Okay.
don't see the thumb, you know, so that's not my hand, it's the
Right,
foot.
yeah.
But for example, you see like this, I had a photograph of a pot, of a ceramic pot, and then that's my body in the photo pot. Or like that's a friend of mine I invited to be part of this performance as my neighbor at the time. But you see that like the way that the flashlight is like, this is, I'm moving my mouse. That's like that's a flashlight burning the photo paper. This blue is a flashlight writing something. This horn, this eye, this is all flashlight on the photo paper. I was making this kind of work at the time. These are all made at in that year 2016. And then the way I was displaying them was, it was all supposed to be a performance. So every work I made in that year of 2016, which was like 36 large photograph, I performed them in galleries in New York. I would, as I was describing, I would hold the work and I would tell what happened that day. You see, like, this is all performance, but every photograph had a painful story. So this photograph is like really abstract. Oh, it's beautiful. But then the story, like the caption it had was that like the day the police came to my house in upstate and I had to hide in the basement, you know, for example. Or like a picture, like large and a very large photograph, a $10 bill, a $1 bill with $9 smaller bill. It's like, it had a very painful story. It was like the day that I didn't have any money and I had to go and like ask some people to, maybe they can in a grocery shop to give me some money, for example. Or like the day that like I had to like ask my grandmother, call my grandmother and say like, can you pray for me because it's really hard here. Those really, really painful stories, for example, you know. Or like when I like ate when I drank like a very expired cheap milk and I got really sick. So I will stop here, but it's really important, that performance that I did for myself, because I learned a lot from that performance. Learned a lot from that body of work that I did. The most important thing I learned was that when I was performing them, people didn't really paid attention to what I was doing with photography. They didn't pay attention that, oh, this person is completely twisting the idea of the installation of a photograph, displaying of a photograph, playing with the, as I was saying, for example, playing with the spoken language, playing with the information, playing with the false information, playing with the biography. When I was performing the piece, it was too painful, and people would usually come to me and say like, hey, how do you feel now? Are you okay? For example, do you need help? Mostly people in New York saw that performance as a cry for help. That's a very sad description, but I think of myself as an observer, and I figured it out that, okay, there is something not matching each other. The story is too painful. It's so much of Hadi and Hadi's body on the photograph. It's my leg, it's my hand, it's my face, it's my, you know, there's always some part of my body was on the photograph, some part of my limbs, you know. And I blamed myself that you put too much of yourself, you put too much of your biography in the work. It became too painful for people. That's why no one is paying attention. No one is caring that what you are doing for the photography or as an artist. It's more becomes a cry for help. So you can see kind of the work I am making now, I have been making the last 2 years, and its relation to that work in the work that I have been making the last 2 years. You can also share, but also the same work we are having in the gallery right now. There is no part of my body on the photograph. There is no. I basically told myself, you will erase everything about yourself from the photograph. There will be nothing visible to a viewer to look at the photograph and say, this is Hadi's story, this is Hadi's life, this is Hadi's biography, this is Hadi's background, you know.
Okay. Yeah, we do have these recurring images, for example, cages and animals and these very traumatic situations like sudden fires or falls, or being trapped. So in a way, I mean, maybe it's a bit metaphorical, but I do see
Right.
recurring imagery that points us back to
Right.
that body of work.
Right.
But yeah, but absolutely, your body in the sort of whatever Susan Weil full scale photogram of
Right.
Hadi has disappeared.
Yeah, it has.
Um,
It has been erased basically, purposefully.
can you talk a little bit about the imagery that we see now, or I mean, if you want to take it in that
Yeah,
direction,
definitely. But like,
and I
I
can
think,
see the screen too because I have images from
sure.
your
Yeah, it would be
shows.
interesting. But I mean, I guess that the description is, imagine an artist who has been spending a year making a body of work all about himself and about his life, and then is figuring out that you cannot do that again. You cannot continue with this. So then you, as an artist, you probably question yourself, then what I can do, what can I show if I'm not supposed to show myself, for example. So at the time I was somehow I was reading a book that remind me of, as you are saying, a very, very symbolic way of reading, which was, I told myself, it's a very funny story. It's about the two rats that meet each other. One is a country mouse, one is a city mouse, and then one invites the other one. It's a satire, basically, and it kind of reminded me that, well, maybe you can play with that. Maybe you can become more symbolic. Maybe you can make some sort of satire that deals with the biography, deals with yourself. It's all you, but it's never you. So I came up with this idea that I am going to have a very limited characters, limited figures. Basically, everything I have made in the last 2 years, the characters, you could see them are, there is always one or two human, and the human could change the role. So sometimes the human could be seen as the owner. Sometimes the human is the guest, for example. I guess here you could say that maybe it seems like the human is the owner, basically. But sometimes there's a human trying to go inside. Sometimes the human is trying to come outside. And then there is always a cat, there is always a rat, and then there is always a dog. But also these three, rat and cat and dog, they can switch the positions. What are the positions they are switching? In my view, in my reading, is that when you see a dog, you always, the first thing you should know is it a stray dog or is it a pet dog? It has, it has an owner, or is it, or the same thing with the cat. Is it a stray cat or is it a pet cat? And simply by those kind of positions, it just shows some sort of hierarchy that already exists within these characters. So very, very, very simple story, very simple I have described for myself is that I don't think we talked about it, Micah, before, but I came up with this kind of explanation that I think, like, if I ask Micah, like, imagine right in my studio, right, I have a pet cat that I have had it for 8 years, right? And then it's very cold in New York right now. So last night it was raining and I took in a stray dog. The dog was really cold and I was really weak. So right now in my studio, there's my pet cat of 8 years. There is this stray dog that came in last night. And also there is a mouse living in this studio, in the wall. And zombies attack us. And then they tell me that, I know it's crazy, but that's how so maybe it's interesting the way so zombies attack me and they tell me that you are all going to die unless you yourself sacrifice one of these living creatures in this house. So I will call Micah, who should I sacrifice? you know probably we go for the mouse, because why? Because the hierarchy exists already. We know that the mouse is the lowest of the low. um and then who should I sacrifice the next? Probably kill the stray dog because, like, oh, it's your pet. I don't want to make it so harder, but I'm trying to show the hierarchy that exists. Who has more power. So in this one, in this scenario, the human, the owner, is the last one who is going to die because I'm supposed to be the most powerful. I'm supposed to have the most important position. But then in my work, I try to constantly, every time, every single time, every single image I have made in the last 2 years, it tries to break that power play, that power relationship. So you see that in this picture, the cat is helping the mouse from the fire and the owner is burning inside and the dog is trying to help the owner. In the other one, for example, the owner is having a drink or getting invited to a table by a dog. In the other one, like, you see that two mouse are helping each other. I don't know, like, three cats are looking above them. Maybe they're searching for them, constantly basically trying to use very limited characters, but constantly switch the power play, switch who is the powerful here. There are other images where you have seen of my work. Sometimes the mouse is in bed with the owner. Sometimes the owner is killing the cat. Sometimes all these different kind of scenarios, different versions of what can happen that would be seen wrong. Like here, the human is like being scared of the big mouse. The mouse is taking over the town or something like that. Um, so that's how the characters are working, but it's all play, because then by doing this, then Hadi is out. The Hadi's biography is out. I'm not there. It's not me. But then I think I like the way you're reading, because you're saying that it becomes symbolic, and if it becomes symbolic, then easily with this repetition of the house, the cage, the jail, the doghouse, this kind of house, then you would ask that, well, what are they functioning as symbolic? And I guess it wouldn't be so hard to see that, well, if you're talking about the stray dog, the mouse, the rat, the pet dog, we are probably also talking about the local, the guest, the host, the immigrant who's trying to get in, the local power who's trying to keep the dog out or keep the mouse out. So it also there. It's not just to your face. I'm not hammering it to the head of the viewer, but also it's, of course, it's very symbolic. It's very satirical, and it's so much about it's represented. I guess the way I describe it for myself is I'm not using a camera. I cannot necessarily represent the real world, but the work is trying to represent the real world. It's trying to represent the world outside of this dark room that I'm living in.
This might sound like a really technical question coming after that, but can you describe the small sculptures at all? We didn't get any for our show, but they do recur.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was hoping to bring a couple of them myself.
I know we were hoping to have you fly here. Yeah.
But so with the sculptures, like, as you can see, like, I guess, I don't know, when you look at them, what's the first thing would catches your eye other than the mouse hole, which is so shocking maybe, or so surprising. But other than the mouse hole, probably the one thing that should kind of flash is that, well, Hadi was just saying that he wouldn't necessarily, he's trying to escape who he is, his identity, his personal story. Then why is it called Persian? Why is he going for that? And that's something I guess I do with the sculptures. I have chosen to erase all these biography, identity, and all of those things from the surface of the photograph. So you wouldn't necessarily, I don't think, like, if you bring someone to the gallery right now behind you, they would be able to say who is the artist, or like what's the identity of the artist. There is no clue left for the viewer. But then with the sculptures, I'm not afraid of playing with that idea. So I'm loading them with the kind of political clues, or I put some cues there. It's like, oh, it's Persian, so it must be something with something. It must do something with Iranianness, or like you have seen it, for example. Sometimes I play with like icons, symbols. Like what's the American symbol? Okay, maybe a cowboy hat. What's the hipster? Maybe a symbol like a Hamlet, a helmet. I try to kind of put them together in a way that I would never do it in my photographs, for example. Most of the my sculptures represent a more current, immediate politics that we are dealing with right now in the world, for example.
Sorry, I'm just flipping through to show some of the sculptural work that's most often incorporated alongside the photographs, and kind of play in that symbol world Hadi's installations create. So this is I think Sculpture Center, New York.
Yes.
Yeah,
like for example, this work, the sculpture, it was called Sand Monkey. Sand Monkey is one of the most painful racial slur you can use against a person from Middle East. And I'm from Middle East, and I have been called Sand Monkey at some point in upstate New York, in a very painful experience I had. But also, as I'm saying, I would never make a photograph to talk about that, to show that pain. But I guess the material, the material of the sculpture, the medium of the sculpture, in the way I'm using it, the way I'm twisting it, can hold that kind of response to the current politic. Let's talk about racism. What does it mean to here is the sand monkey? Do I look like the sand monkey? And why is it a sand monkey? Because it's a pot, and I didn't glaze it. I just used sand on it, and then there's a face for it. So I try to play with those kind of it's not necessarily play, it's trying to bring them to the surface and see then what happens. You see a photograph on the left that has no clue, what are these? Are they human? Are they not human? What's happening here? And then on the right side, it's even being titled something really painful or something really graphic, basically, you know, in a human way.
I was going to get into two more performative aspects of your work, the press releases, and maybe talk a bit about the show that you did with Phoebe. But I realized we actually don't have that much time. We've been talking straight through, and so maybe I should at least stop sharing the screen a little bit and just see if we have questions, because I can't see that from here, and then we can go back to this if it.
Sure.
There's a lot or something. Let's see. We do have some questions. Okay. Does Phil, do you want to get on and ask your question? We could have you. Hey, look at that. Oh, you're muted. Awesome.
Hey, Hadi, what's going on? Work looks great, man.
Thank you. Hello.
Hey, so question for you, you know, especially looking at the red image and then hearing you talk about the Molotov cocktails. I mean, that's immediately what I thought about actually when I first saw it, because of the fact of the animal holding the bottle and then the fire. So when you're thinking about that, or when you're placing the bottles in your images, do you think of them as having this kind of dual purpose of being both friendly and violent at the same time?
I think so. I mean, I guess with an object like a bottle, it's more clear that it could have other use. You know, like you could use a bottle to have a nice time and drink, or you could hit someone's head and then make a fight. You know, so
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. But at the same time, I'm interested in making a kind of play of the image play, the visual play that would be really open to what the viewer kind of sees in the work. You know, because at the same time, sometimes it might be seen as a maybe mean gesture. Like, why would you do that? Why do you want the viewer to complete the work? But at least the system I have made is that even I don't necessarily see what I'm making. So even myself, I'm a viewer when it's done. You know, I'm incapable of making the work perfect because it's done in a very complicated manner. So because I want to be the one who is completing the work after it's done, I guess the same thing I'm expecting from the audience to come in and say, what is the story here? Did the cat, for example, as you're, I mean, if you try to extend the narrative, is that did the cat, the cat set the house on fire, or the cat is just loves the wine and that's the only thing he's trying to get an escape? You know, those kind of plays at the same time. You know,
Absolutely.
I try to keep it balanced, basically.
Nice.
I think we have a question from Jamie Ferris, if she doesn't mind getting on about Molotov cocktails.
Right.
Actually, it wasn't so much a question as a comment. I just appreciated seeing it circulated through art forum context rather than in an exhibition, and the art forum context as a whole history of conceptual art circulation, I thought was pretty interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to give an ad to art forum, and I chose to give a to show the other side. I showed some of those pieces at Andrew Krebs Gallery, but they were never used. But for the ad, again, I put a performance out. I went and I set I dig the hole again 4 years later. I basically made a grave, and I set one of these Molotovs on fire and I threw it to this darkness, and I took a picture of it. But basically, I appreciate what you're saying. I believe that's how I was using. I was thinking that the advertisement shouldn't only be an advertisement. It could be used also as a way of performance and performing something, you know, for the show.
And your show is called Blow Up as well.
Blow Ups, yeah.
And you also do have this history of doing these very, I don't want to say clever, but like attention-grabbing press releases and statements, like the exchange you had with Phoebe for the show you did with her. Even for this show, I remember the show at Tramps, also kind of infecting my Instagram or texts or something in this very, in these very unusual ways. And obviously there's a history of, as Jamie's alluding to, of using art forum ads as a space to create sort of conceptual
I mean, I
pieces
guess
as well.
my one like fast response is that the text is also a place to perform, and I try to use the text, the idea of press release, as a stage to perform something on it.
Right, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, we have so many questions. Sorry, I have to read these more slowly, but maybe we'll just go back to Phil because it's so short. Some of the restrictions artists have in Iran.
Yeah, just because you had mentioned it before when you were talking about your work and going back there. So I was just kind of curious for someone that doesn't know a lot about that, like what are some of the restrictions in Iran? And is it something like the work you're doing here? Is it something that can in fact get you thrown in jail or?
I mean, I guess the Molotov I made here could also put me in jail here too, but that kind of work is, I guess, dangerous everywhere. But I remember one thing, it's a back story, just to show how it worked for me. It's not for everyone. I have a lot of friends, there are a lot of people who live in Iran, they are making great art. In my case, I had more issues because I was dealing with photography, and the photography is like, it's a tool that could be seen as a spy, as a more fast kind of way of criticizing the society, for example. But I had a series of work that I did in Iran on some fruits. I went to a garden and I take some photographs. I make it very simple, just to show you about what I was dealing with at the time. And they didn't allow me to show those photographs because they thought it's all sexual references. So, but it's not Iran. It's just that person who was in charge of allowing a show to come through, and that person chose to think that it's all sexual references and you cannot show this work, for example. But then also in a more broad way is that, well, you cannot have nudity. You cannot really show. It's Islamic country. It's run by Islamic rules. So you can imagine it's similar to cinema, to music.
Robin has a question about your use of color. I don't know if she wants to pop up and ask it herself, or it's a short one. I can also read it pretty easily. Robin, what to say?
Sorry, I just went to the dentist earlier, so I can't really talk very well.
No, you're fine. Do you use specific colors to invoke emotion or feeling? Are the color choices deliberate?
One thing to talk about the color is that I try to politicize that. I try to play with this idea of color darkroom. In a color darkroom, every color you use, meaning I use, it comes out as opposite. So the work that is red, and we are calling it the red piece, it was in fact made with a blue light. Or the work that is yellow on the left side behind Micah is also, the red one is a cyan, a cyanish blue, and the yellow one is made with a deep blue that causes the yellowness. So I do choose the color, basically. I choose the flashlight I'm using. But then, because I don't have that much control that how it will look like, I know that it will be opposite, but it will be inverted, the color. At this point, I allow the chance to choose the color. I'm not even so crazy about what color I'm choosing or what will be the, I guess I'm more interested in that idea of something being inverted. And if the colors are inverted, then maybe the forms also should be inverted, for example, if the blue was yellow, then what was the mouse, what was the mouse standing for that came out as mouse or came out as...
It was a cat in the negative
exactly.
version. Yeah. Okay, we have Jade on Jade Peters. Do you want to?
Okay. Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
I have a question. Hi. I really enjoyed what you're talking about so far. But I was curious, from the switch between putting yourself in your work versus more of with the cats and the dogs and the rats, what caused that? Was there a specific shift, or was it just more of a gradual?
I tried to explain that when I was doing that, then no one was able to see what I'm doing for photography. Everyone was thinking that, oh, this poor immigrant is trying to tell us that he has issues, that he needs help. And I had problem, I had issues, I needed help, but I wasn't making art for that. I was really trying to push photography. So I chose that I'm not going to have my body in the photograph visible anymore, at least now. So it can help the audience to think about photography, to think about what's happening in the art form, and not necessarily a cry for help from my side,
So you wanted it to be less of a personal thing?
I chose, I don't think it's this personal right now, but I chose a kind of visual, a formal decision that it would remind you less of who is the artist or what is he going through, for example, in my case, you know. It's still pretty biographical, and you cannot really escape your biography. That's my belief, you know, and I play with it in the sculpture form. But in the photographs I chose, I thought it's my way of helping the photograph. The photograph don't need my body in them, you know. I'm there, I'm constantly, it's my body who is drawing all of these lines, but it doesn't need a part of my body, my hand, my leg, or my face assigned to it, or like a captured on it, for example, you know.
It's so funny because I approach it so much as a photographic question, your work, because maybe because of first encountering you through that camera club, the Baxter Street show, and then inviting you to be in this show, this series, which is about photography. So I'm kind of constantly thinking, oh, I'm shocked he hasn't been in new photography. Like, this is about the medium of photography itself. But I can certainly see, I think it's kind of a really interesting problem for particularly people coming out of an MFA right now, that balance of how much of your own biography or even just body you're putting in your work. And I feel like you've, at least for now, solved that in a really elegant way.
I mean, I personally, again, I have a specific relationship with photography. I'm too invested in it. I had the foundation personally, and I was interested to see how I can twist it, how I can push it, how I can try to maybe move the boundaries of it, you know, like we didn't necessarily talk, but for example, the photographs I'm making, they're all being stretched around the stretcher bar. Or for example, for this show, we came up with a decision of not framing them, not putting them behind the glass, and instead to play with that painterly aspect of it, you know, like Micah and I are aware that these are photographs. This is all made in a photographic medium and with photographic system, but nothing goes wrong if you suggest to put some canvas around it also, you know, to play with that, you know, let's not take it so seriously, for example. But at the same time, Micah, to follow what you're saying is that there is nothing wrong to make something biographical also, you know. It was just my way of thinking that I am getting in the way of my work, for example, and I wanted the photograph to be seen as a way of pushing photography. So I chose to erase the Hadi part from the work, basically, you know. It's not erased, it's still there, but it's not into your head, it's not your face, you know. You don't need to deal with my body.
I think Gay had a question about the visa issue, actually. If you want to pop up, Gay. I don't know if you're camera ready. Feeling it's the big challenge of this.
Hi.
Great.
So it's not an art question, Hadi. You said that you had to return to Iran, and so I'm just wondering how you were able to be here.
I never left.
Despite of Trump. Oh, you never left. Okay.
I never left. Yeah. I just told myself, just hang on, it should be fine after 4 years, and I guess I was lucky, and it got better after 4 years, you know.
Yeah.
I have an artist visa now, so I don't have a problem.
Yeah. So a friend of mine was put in jail because he went to Trump's golf courses and then he wrote messages by killing the grass with his golf cart.
Also,
so I thought you would enjoy that.
Right.
But he was not killed because he was white. Or he is white.
Well, he should have hired a drone, something from the top to record also the performance. Would have been fun to, fun to put out, you know.
Next show.
Yeah. Next show.
Who else is up there? Noah, would you like to pop up?
Yeah. Hey, is this work?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just wondering about your book. I really like the, you know, the very simple untitled one. I really liked how well the work was reproduced, and it seemed like the book was so simple that it seemed like your main concern was just reproducing them very well and sort of not adding anything else. Was that how you saw it, or was there any more conceptual, like, other reason for how the book is? Or
I think Noah is talking about the book I published last year with Hasla Books. It's a 16 pages book. I
can go get it if you want.
I don't have it on here, but maybe people can see it. But I will respond that I chose at the time I was producing that work in synchronized with my show at Tramps, which is the show Micah is talking about, with a specific press release I wrote for that show. In that press release, I didn't talk about photography. I didn't talk about art. I just wrote a semi kind of personal message about someone who is being getting harassment calls and being called racial slurs, you know. So at the time I was thinking that I have the text aspect, I can use the text, but I'm going to refuse to use the text. So I did the same kind of I did the same way of thinking toward the book. I said there is no, I do not want to have any kind of text, not even a title basically for the book. It's just the images. And it was the same way I did that show at Tramps. There was no text talking about the photography or describing the photographs or giving more information about them. That's how I saw it.
Cool.
Yeah. But like, for example, I'm publishing a new book of the performance that I just shared for a couple of minutes. And for that book, I'm inviting 5 different people who have seen that performance to then they would write the text for it, you know. So then I'm putting a lot of different texts from different eyes for the same piece, you know. So I'm always thinking of, as I was just saying, the text is also a stage to perform, you know. I try to push it in a way that might be specific or unique to me or also surprising for others.
Cool.
I wonder if we should, let's see. Oh, there's more questions. Juliet, do you want to hop up? This actually works really well on Zoom because the person, if you turn your video on, pops right up. I can also ask your question for you if you don't feel comfortable. Hey, there you are.
So I saw the like updated Commons gallery a couple weeks ago, and I like ran over to read the statements because I find them really interesting. And I saw that you say like you use the physical conditions and psychoanalytical like statements, and you use 20th century models about the unconscious mind. And I was wondering which models do you use and like what theories particularly interest you?
Well, I guess the same way that's the first thing also came up when I was describing my specific relation to photography, you know. I guess the act of an artist choosing to be blind, choosing to go to a darkness, choosing to, and being aware that you tell everyone this story about this condition of making art, it makes the audience probably to think of, oh, maybe here the artist is trying to go back to his memories, you know, maybe the artist is trying to break into something from the past, or maybe the artist needs this darkness to break out, you know. So, and I'm doing neither of them. I'm consciously trying to stay in between of these two, but it's very psychoanalytic, right? To either to break in something from the past or to break out of something from inside yourself. So I guess that's one of the references that is always visible in the work. And then also it comes in when you have a symbolic read, you know. The second the symbolic read comes in, then you are dealing with psychoanalysts. When the second the idea of the projection comes in, so if I'm asking you or for other people here to, for example, talk about that yellow piece behind Micah, the one that a mouse is holding another mouse, each one of us will have a different reading, you know, because the artist has made it so open that it could be so many different readings can come in from just the yellow piece that the mouse is holding another mouse, you know. And that also allows for psychoanalysts, because then it means that everyone is projecting something so specific to what they are going through or what they have been trained in their modes of thinking, you know. So that's one aspect of kind of a psychoanalyst of it, psychoanalytic of it. And the other part about the 20th century or late 19th century of beginning of photography, we talked with Michael a little at the beginning before this talk, is that, for example, I grew up with my mother is a photography teacher, but she has been trained in like late 80s in Middle East. So she has a very old fashioned idea of photography. So she would, and you could see it in her work, she always told me, what you are seeing as photography is not photography. Photography is supposed to be painting with light. It's a really, really old idea of photography. It's a really different ways of thinking, you know. Or what I was talking with Michael in the past was that one of the early photographers who started making photographs, they were supposedly they were the painters who couldn't necessarily paint well. So they came up with this idea that the photography could help me to paint what I want to paint even better than other painters, you know. So I'm not necessarily influenced by it, but I play with those ideas, you know. That's how the work becomes so painterly. But then it's a really bad painting if it's a painting. It looks like a child painting, you know. So then what's the value of a child painting in this size, so big, 4x6, for example, you know. That's how I see it. But also Micah was the person who did the take, so maybe Micah has also another approach to it.
I guess I was also thinking about the way that analog photography was often used to as a kind of model for the way that the unconscious mind works in Freudian psychotherapy, in which there might be an event that that can be registered as a trauma, unseen and kind of unrecognized, but stored almost kind of chemically in the mind, that comes out through talk therapy, specifically in Freudian therapy, And once it's kind of developed in that way, it can be looked at more objectively, and kind of maybe then the patient can start to examine it as a sort of event. But the idea that there's this kind of latent image that's a trauma, for some reason that really spoke to me as a model for thinking about Hadi's photographic performances on these large sheets of color paper, and then the way in which they are developed sometimes months later. So I guess I was kind of looking back to that as an origin point.
That's cool. Yeah.
Also, the condition of going to the darkness, that's the place that you are going to see the unseen. That's the place you don't want to go. You might be scared of what you might find out in the darkness. So it kind of responds to that at the same time. I play with it because I'm repeating that. It's not once, but I guess it kind of has some cues for those kind of readings.
Again, we're right at 1:13. I'm kind of amazed. I think we're kind of at a good point to end this. Thank you so much, Hadi, for sharing with us. Your beautiful show is up until December 10th in our Commons Gallery. I know you're doing some crits with our MFA students and advanced photo students as well. So thank you so much for everything. We only wish you could be here with us. And thank you everyone who came. I really enjoy these lunchtime talks and have been enjoying doing them. We'll start them up again in the spring semester. Look out for an email with Stephanie Sajuko. All right.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much, Micah. I'm very happy. I'm sad that I cannot be there to see the show, but let's see. And thanks everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.